Hello, veterinary friends. Welcome to the Veterinary Life Coach podcast. Today, we're talking about stress and burnout, which is something that veterinarians need to solve for. To talk about this with me, I have a wonderful guest for you. His name is Andrew O'Brien. He's a national board certified health and wellness coach, a professional certified coach by the International Coaching Federation, and he's the founder of the Mindblowing Coach, a business with a sole mission of boldly and authentically partnering with individuals and organizations in eliminating whatever chronic stress is plaguing them so that they can live a life with more meaning, purpose, energy, health, and joy. I love that. Welcome to the podcast, Andrew. I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Julie. And
it's going to be so fun talking about stress and burnout.
yes, and I'm just so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're going to fix all this for us, right? Tell
That
us
is the
how to
vision.
live with health, energy, and joy. I love that. That's a great ending to your bio. So my first question to all my guests is always to tell me their story. So you can tell me as much or as little as you want to, but just tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. And so I have found, I don't know if this is like a blanket statement across all coaches, but I have found that generally speaking, when coaches are passionate about a certain area, in my case, stress and relief, like it's because that person has experienced some degree of whatever that thing is that person is working in and around. And so,
Truth, right? Right. They're solving it for themselves.
mm-hmm. And and so in my case, yeah, I've become passionate about this work because I am a former sufferer of chronic stress and burnout for years and years and years of my life. It was just something that I didn't know at the time what was happening or what I could do differently. But I did know that I was experiencing all sorts of like physical stress symptoms, emotional stress symptoms throughout a majority of my life. And once I came across like the different pieces of science that I was grabbing from different areas and my own experience and education in this way, it was then that I started to kind of create these ways in which we can proactively manage this stress so that we can live without it, without the chronic stress piece, the burnout piece. And so what led to all of my own chronic stress and burnout, that goes back to me growing up as a kid who I thought was very different from everyone else around me. And,
Yeah.
mhm. And that particular thing, I happened to be a gay man, and so growing up, really not knowing who I was from that perspective, surrounded by folks who weren't that, was very confusing for me, and uh, the the notion of me then coming to terms with, okay, I think I am this person, but again, not having anyone to like look up to in that regard,
Right.
uh, was was very tough. Coupled with the fact that there were some salient images on the media that I came across growing up that reflecting now, looking back on it now, I know instilled a lot of fear in me. And it was, horrific stories of other gay kids around the country getting murdered and bullied and things of that nature. I wasn't going through that directly in my own community, in my school,
Right.
but I know that my brain told me to be very, very scared about that. And my brain told me to keep that part quiet as a way to try to protect me from that, possibly experiencing that. And so I think that was one of the biggest uh, things that contributed to my own chronic stress and burnout over my life. Because what happened was, all right, I listened to my brain. I kept that part like quiet, and I wasn't my authentic self. I wasn't my true self. And so what did I do instead? I I chose a path to best fit in as possible.
Mm,
And in the moment, I wasn't like an athlete in my community. It was like you're either like an athlete or one of the nerds, and so I was like, all right, I'm going to choose a nerd because I wasn't athletic at the time, and that's the path that I chose, and I was like, it was straight A's or bust.
oh, yeah. So you put that pressure on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
100% because it was a whole like if I could prove to people that I'm intelligent in this way, at least I'll fit in some capacity. I'll fit in some
Right, right.
way.
Yeah. Wow.
So there's a lot of self-pressure. And that all translated into many different aspects of my life, like post high school. That continued in college. It continued in the workforce after I graduated college. Um, Never knowing quite what I wanted to do professionally, and having a lot of pressure on myself about like what it is that I wanted to do, and not really ever having that clarity until later, much later on in my life. And yeah, so all of that led up to just me not being my authentic self. And because I was um, choosing that path, I experienced a lot of symptoms, and both physical, emotional, and from a physical stress symptom perspective, growing up, a lot of nail biting, lots of nail biting.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one. I used to bite my nails when I was a little kid. I was able to break it, but yeah, that's a big thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you realize it at the time that you were doing it because you were stressed? Okay.
No,
But looking
no,
back on it, that was a symptom.
100%.
Yeah.
I still remember like the strategies my parents used to try to like get me to stop, including like
Which
putting
probably
tape.
causes more stress, right?
I know, like putting tape around my fingers.
Oh,
They bought some
goodness.
sort of like spice, like nail polish spice.
Yeah,
Um,
there's like hot sauce or something.
yeah, something like that. And so that was one thing. Like bedwetting was another thing that I experienced until late.
Yeah.
Junior high school is when I finally kind of got over that, and that, in my view, was all connected to this process. Uh, Eyelid twitches,
Mm,
another physical symptom that I experience a lot of, and
yes.
my most recent bout was uh, a few years back now. My last bout of this chronic stress, like I had an incessant eyelid twitch for about a year straight, which was,
Oh, that would be maddening.
oh my God. Yeah. It was really, 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 really frustrating. GI issues I experienced. And then of course, like feeling down and um
Unhappy.
unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah. So when did you realize that all the physical stuff was related to the stress that you were feeling because of the identity that you were trying to hide or prove to people that, you could fit in? Or when did you kind of make that connection?
It that also, I believe, was a journey. And uh it was like one of the most memorable moments for me, I think, from a learning perspective, was me attending a wellness conference in connection. I was mostly my career in HR, and so I was attending these conferences. There was a wellness conference I attended, and uh, a lot of what I have incorporated into my own um, strategies for proactively managing the stress came from that. A lot of the science I picked from that. It was very it resonated with me because I knew it was science. It was hard facts, and I think that was like the first thing that opened my eyes up a little bit. Uh, then kind of started to go down this spiritual journey, and I got connected with someone who I follow who opened my eyes even more. And the final, I think, moment was the most recent one, like 3 to 4 years ago, where I was just done. I was so done with what I was doing professionally and very down. I was working with a therapist at the time, and uh, it was it was in those moments where I said, life can't be this. And when I had that like awareness, I said, all right, if life can't be this, what can it be? And then I think I recalled like everything that I've been gathering up and picking up along these years and started to put all those different pieces together in support of me of the time.
Right, right. And then you decided that you could help others.
Yeah, exactly. Once I knew that this stuff actually works, um, I was like, I got to do more with it. I got to do more with this, and so that's what I've been doing.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you so much more because that is a great story. But explain to me and us what it means to experience chronic stress and burnout. Does that come from your childhood? Is it something that you can experience in a shorter term, just from a job? Like, how do you see that concept? Because everyone describes it a little differently.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question, and from my experience and training, this chronic stress. So take a back step. We are human, and we have a stress response system built into us. And so as long as we have that stress response system as humans, we're never going to be able to get rid of that word stress. Like stress, it's a thing, and it's there actually to protect us, and it's a healthy thing for us to kind of experience. And when I talk about this, I talk about like the flow in and out of that stress response and homeostasis.
Yes.
That is really the goal for us as living creatures, or as I call it, we're actually like living nervous systems.
Because
And
we have to have some stress.
mhm,
I mean, as veterinarians, we know that the stress kind of helps you make quick decisions and act quickly. And so I love that you said that because everybody's always trying to get rid of stress, and that's not quite it, right?
100%.
Okay.
Um, we don't want to fully get rid of it, nor can we biologically, but we don't want to because, to your point, uh, some of this is actually beneficial for us. And
Needed. Yeah.
and whether that's, to your point, making quick, fast decisions with the animals that you're working with, or taking an exam, or prepping for a public speaking gig. Uh, there's all sorts of stress that's considered good and healthy and normal for us to experience. And on top of that, like if we are actually going to experience a real threat in our life, we want our stress response system to activate to tell us what to do in milliseconds. And that's what it does. I talk about, actually, this is relevant. I talk about a recent example of this that happened to me. A few weeks back, I was walking through Central Park, and I walk through Central Park in the mornings generally. And this is the time of day where dogs are allowed to go unleashed.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Central Park has that?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Hmm.
Mhm. There's a certain period of time where dogs are allowed to run around. And it's honestly like the cutest thing ever. You see all these like puppies running all over the
I
place.
bet. Yeah.
Uh, and it's one of the best parts of my day because it's just like so much fun energy, like flying all over the place. This one particular morning, however, I was walking across, and uh, there was a dog that I noticed was charging me and barking. And it was a big dog, and my brain was just like, wow, this is like an aggressive dog charging me. And I see the dog's owner like trying to chase after the dog. But like those are the moments, like that's a real threat. Like
Yeah, you
those,
have to decide what to do quickly.
yeah. And so what did my brain do in the moment? It was fat, like I'm so super aware with this stuff. So I knew exactly what I did and like in real time. And like I actually put my arms up like this and I kind of like turned myself to the side as the dog got a lot closer to me because my brain knew that this is the most vulnerable part of us.
Right.
And I instinctively like turned away from the dog. So if the dog went to bite me, it would kind of like bite the rear end as opposed to anything else. And so this is why we want our stress response to be activated. Uh, and when we're proactively managing our stress, I would be able to then, after that experience subsides and passes, go back to my homeostasis. Like it goes back to that flow in, flow out, flow in,
Not
flow out.
hang on to it and just be like all cranked up all day because a dog charged you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and so just to kind of throw some more science in this conversation, I keep saying like brain, but what's specifically happening in the brain, as you might already know, is that that stress response system, that fear response system is controlled by the amygdala. And the amygdala is a small almond-shaped piece within our brains that truly tells us what to do, whether to fight, flight, freeze, or however we're going to cope with that threat. The fascinating part is that the amygdala does not know the difference between real and perceived. And so it's constantly scanning for threats. And if we find ourselves in an activated stress response, which over time, if that happens, that's when the negative health outcomes can emerge. If that happens, the amygdala MRI show actually expands in size.
Mm, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Simultaneously, what else is happening with a couple of different brain parts uh, in the opposite direction? So the prefrontal cortex here, which is responsible for logic, rationale, executive reasoning, positive emotions are stored in the prefrontal cortex as well. And a second brain part called the hippocampus, which is a sliver within the brain, also connected with positive emotions, learning, and memory. Uh, those two brain parts actually shrink down in size when we're in an activated stress response over time. And so it's no wonder why, if we are feeling overwhelmed, burned out, run down, in survival mode, it's no wonder we feel that because it's biological. Uh, and and so I think your initial question is like, how do I define chronic stress? So that's a long-winded way of me getting to
That's okay. You're teaching us things.
to the
And
answer
we
there.
like to learn. I like to learn.
Uh, so the way I define chronic stress is that prolonged period of activated stress, and that could be days, weeks, months. Um, and and what I consider burnout is beyond that, is beyond,
It's the accumulation of the chronic stress,
yeah.
burnout, right? It's like you're stressed for so long that your brain just starts to kind of shut down because you can't take it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Like when I had those moments that just like done, I'm done. uh
Well, I
and
think we feel that sometimes, when there's so much stress in our life that we don't know what to do, sometimes we do just retreat, and it might be retreat into watching too much TV or scrolling the internet or,
mm,
eating too much or drinking too much or, kind of the coach that I learned from calls it buffering our feelings because we're so over feeling all that stress that we just kind of like check out of life, but try to use things to, make us feel better or just block out the world and go
Mm-hmm.
into some other realm.
Yeah. And we do that because they generally feel good in the short term.
Right.
Uh, and and we know long term those behaviors are not the greatest for us. But in the short term, it's that quick fix. We're going for that. Like, I just need something quick to make me feel good in this moment because I just can't. Uh, and so again, yeah, like my quick fix was always going to like desserts
Oh,
and
I'm with you. Yeah. Anything sweet.
sweets, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
And
you got some chocolate or yeah, that's I'm all about that too.
mm-hmm,
Is eating and sweets.
yeah.
So when somebody, let's say for example, someone thinks they're burned out, is feeling burned out by their job. What I see is a lot of people blame the circumstance, like blame their job or blame their family or blame for their constant stress. Do you find that is true, or do you find that it's accumulated like it was with you? Like it started as a kid because you were coping with the fact that you were gay in an area that not too many people were talking about that, and then you got a job that you didn't really like, and it just kind of piled onto itself over time. Do you find like that's the norm, or is it more we just have a stressful job and so we get burned out?
I actually think it could be a combination of both.
Okay.
And I've worked with clients who have had accumulated stressors over time. I've also had clients in the latter just like have a salient like stressor that they don't quite know how to manage. Um, so I would say a combination of both.
And is it possible then to take that person, whichever way that they came to be burned out, take them and give them the tools that they need to figure out? I mean, I kind of know the answer, that there's a yes answer coming, but how do you take that person and start to get them back on the road to dealing and managing that stress and not being burned out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh, so one of my clients, actually, I can't take credit for this name, but one of my clients coined what I now refer to as the O'Brien 10. And the O'Brien 10, what is that? That like what's the 10? So the 10 are 10 domains of science that folks can apply into their daily life to proactively manage their stress.
Oh, are we getting to this too early, or are you ready to tell us this? Because this sounds fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to dive into that. There's also
Okay.
something that like whenever I talk about this topic too, the other piece that I like to incorporate is um, is self-compassion. So if any one of your listeners right now are experiencing what we're talking about, chronic stress or
Chronic
burnout,
stress and burnout. Yeah.
mm, I I invite those folks, even the folks who are living life right now, self-compassion can never hurt anyone. And I invite folks to think about this concept as we go through this. And I say this for two reasons. One, what I just shared with the biology of what's happening within ourselves when we're going through a stress response. And two, our brains haven't quite yet evolved with current day. And what do I mean by that? So if we imagine for a moment, because that's all we can do right now, I don't think we've ever lived the cave people days, but if we can imagine that how those folks lived during the cave people days, uh, what were some of the things that they were doing day to day? They were hunting, they were gathering, prepping, eating, sleeping, talking. Uh, it was compared to today, a life where the human brain was able to go out of homeostasis in the stress response quite easily. If, for example, one of those cave people were out gathering or hunting and they came across that real threat, that brain would do what it did for me in Central Park the other morning.
Yeah,
Uh,
kick in.
and then after that passes, uh, you have the opportunity to kind of get back to that homeostasis. And now flash forward to today where I mentioned that brain does not know the difference. The amygdala doesn't know the difference between real or perceived threats. We're constantly bombarded with information, whether that's coming from the media, whether that's coming from people we're talking to, whether that's coming from social media or any other outlet, you name it, like it's out there. Technology has advanced tremendously, and there are a lot of benefits with technology, like this being one of those benefits.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Well, even your past stories can be part of that, correct? Like
mhm.
your brain's being bombarded not only by what's happening right now, but also about all the stress that you've had in the past. And it kind of follows you in a lot of
Yeah.
ways if you don't resolve that, your past traumas and your past fears. We have a lot of fear in vet med about, the case that didn't go well. And
Mhm.
5 years ago, I did such and such, and the pet didn't do well. And now I've got another pet that's in a similar situation. And so now I'm afraid because last time this didn't go well and I've got to do it again or whatever. All those past things are stored in that little amygdala, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
um so from all that perspective, like just have that compassion that you are human. We are human. And our brains, as incredible as they are, uh, we have to be proactive in managing our stress response today, as opposed to like during the cave people days, as an example.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so I wanted to incorporate the self-compassion piece as we're going through this. And yeah, I could dive into the 10.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to hear it.
All
If
right.
you think it's appropriate to teach us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the first five categories, they might be more straightforward, and they might be more like reminders for us as proactively managing the stress. The second five might be a little bit more, oh, never thought about it quite like that before. Uh, so so category number one is oxygen,
Yes.
conscious deep breathing. Our brains actually use 20% of our total body's oxygen supply, and even shallow breathing, like to the chest, which I guarantee you we're all doing right now, myself included.
As we're lazy. As soon as
Yeah.
you said oxygen, I took a better breath. I sat up straighter.
Yeah. Uh, I have become more mindful of this throughout my day, but like I'm gonna be real, like right now in this moment, I'm shallow breathing 100%. But
Sure.
even that shallow breathing over time, it can contribute to that mild oxygen deprivation, which can lead to all sorts of um, chronic stress and burnout if when it builds up over time. Uh, and there's so many different methods out there that might resonate with folks. So I will invite you and your listeners to explore if this is an area of interest, um, to see what kind of breathing methods are out there. Just a couple that are coming to mind right now. There's the box breathing method,
Mhm.
which is when you kind of like inhale for a count of four, you're holding it for a count of four, you're exhaling for a count of four, and then you're holding it again for a count of four. Uh, there's quite a bit of science behind how that particular method has helped high stress teams, such as like healthcare workers and Navy SEALs have used that method in the past. Um, the 4-7-8 method, you're inhaling for a count of four, you're holding for seven, and you're exhaling for eight. Just like a simple like inhale down to the bottoms of the bellies and an exhale, like even that alone can be helpful. There's a ton. There's a ton of different breathing methods out there. And that actually leads me to another couple points I want to make about these 10. The science applies to us all as humans. How we then incorporate them into our life is going to be different per person.
Hmm. I love that. I love that you said that because, I talk about this stuff a lot. I talk to a lot of people that talk about this stuff a lot. We see a lot of presentations, and for you to say that it's individual and you have to figure out what works for you, I think is really important because, people are like, "Oh, I have to meditate and do yoga and breathe and I don't want to do all that." And then it doesn't work. It just causes more stress. And so I'm glad that you said that you have to figure out what works for you. And I also love that you call it oxygen and not breathing, because I haven't quite heard anyone say it that way. And I think that strikes a chord with us because we know how important oxygen is to our
Mhm.
patients. And so I love that you said that. So continue. I'm sorry I interrupted.
No worries. Interrupt away.
I was excited about that. When you said oxygen, I'm like, yes, that's a perfect way to say it. I'm going to steal that.
Cool. Uh, and then the other like foundational piece that I didn't say before that I'll say now is there's no order of importance to these 10 either. And there's no state of perfection here. It's all about every single one of these domains that I'm about to highlight. It's all about optimization, not perfection. Um, and so domain number 2, category number 2 is water,
Mm,
hydration. And our brains are 80% water. And that's significant. I invite you to think about how much water you're intaking in a day. And we're talking about simple, clean, like clean water. We're not talking about mixing it with any other thing, like just simple, straight water. How much of that are you drinking in a day? Uh, I'll share a couple of pieces of science here. One meaning uh, from the CDC's perspective, there's actually no recommended standard for us and how much we should be drinking because like we're all different, like living in different parts of the country, different temperatures, different
different
environments,
sizes.
different sizes, where we have different physical activity regimens, and if we're sweating more, we're obviously going to need to drink more. So I can't give you like a guideline from that perspective, but what I can provide to you, I did connect with a couple of nutritionists. You might already be aware of this, and your listeners might already be aware. These two nutritionists did not know each other, but they both had the same piece of recommendation, which is to see if you can maintain throughout the day a pale yellow urine color. They both said if you can do that, you are adequately hydrated. And so that's what I've adopted, and that's what I look to maintain throughout my day. So that's category number 2. Category number 3 is all about enhancing that nutrition. And this is not going to be a lecture on like what diet's the best here. This is not what this is about. That's also beyond the scope of what I do. But what I will share is that our brains, our friendly brains up here, they're very intimately connected to our guts via the vagus nerve, constantly talking to each other. And I'm so blown away by this statistic. Approximately 95% of our serotonin, which is one of our feel-good hormones, is actually produced in the gut. And so if we're not putting foods in that gut that our gut likes, that serotonin does not have an opportunity to produce in the way that it could, which also could be contributing to chronic stress, to burnout. And from the CDC perspective, this is a complex category. I want to just put that out there. And there is no one size fits all with with food and nutrition, because we are all bio-individual. But there is common consensus of what I'm about to share with you, and that's from the CDC perspective. And so what we should be doing as humans is really optimizing the vegetables, optimizing the fruits, optimizing the lean proteins, the grains, the fibers, optimizing the fibers, super beneficial for us. The healthy fats, those omega-3s. Our brain loves the omega-3s. Those are the things that we should be optimizing. And what we should be limiting or avoiding. This is my least favorite part of when I talk about the O'Brien 10, because we talked about it a little bit before, and that's the added sugars.
Right.
It's those added sugars can be very harmful for us and the gut, and so seeing what we might be able to do to limit that or cut it out completely. I always recommend look at those nutrition labels, folks, because there are so many added sugars that they sneak in there. And there's always a line item for added sugars. And I've made it a habit now. Anything that I buy, I look. And if there's added sugars, I don't do it. I don't
Put it back. Yeah.
I do allow myself a weekly treat with the added sugar perspective, but outside of that, I'm very, very regimented with that. And the other things to limit or avoid, of course, alcohol, and of course, avoid completely the smoking piece. So those are some of the areas that the CDC highlights as things that we should be optimizing or limiting, cutting out as far as nutrition goes. So that's category number 3. Category number 4 is all about that physical activity, exercise. And when we're exercising, we're actually increasing the blood flow. We're increasing the oxygen to our brains. There's also research that supports it enhances learning. It enhances memory. And again, there's no one right way to do this. Bottom line is that we are human and we're born to move. We're meant to move. Even if there are physical restrictions out there, whether those are temporary, whether those are permanent. I recommend consult with your MD on what you can do, because there's always something that you can do. And you just want to do it in that safe way possible. For folks who are considered in that healthy population from 18 to 65, that's what I'll focus on for right now. The CDC actually does have all sorts of different categories and recommendations for different populations. But for 18 to 65, the recommendation is that we should be getting at least 150 minutes of moderate cardio activity across the week. Whatever that might look like for you. You can break it up in however time chunks you want, and do whatever you want. Doesn't have to be like one form of exercise all the time. Or at least 75 minutes of the more vigorous cardio movement activity. In addition to that, just a couple of days of resistance training to work on the muscles of ours and the bones. Yeah, so those are the recommendations from the CDC with respect to physical activity. I recommend folks, if I didn't cover your population, check out the site, because there are some really good recommendations in there for different age groups and different populations in there.
Well, and most people can move a little bit more. We're fortunate in vet med as our job is fairly active. We're on our feet all day, which I found for me was helpful, especially when I was working full time, because you have a busy day and you're just constantly on your feet. You put in a lot of steps, but also adding something to that. I just feel like exercise makes you feel better. Like it might not feel great when you're doing it, but after you're done, it just makes you feel better. No matter what I do, I'll feel And then I'll say, well, I'm just going to ride my bike a little bit. And then I'll get going and I just keep riding. And then I'm like, oh, this is great. And then I get back and I'm tired, but it's like a good tired.
Mm-hmm. I hear that. Yep. Um, and I think that's a beautiful segue into the next category. Speaking of tired,
See, I knew that was coming, right?
uh, your intuition is on. Uh, and yeah, and so that fifth category now is sleep. And sleep is wow, there's so many beneficial things that happen when we get regular,
Well, this
consistent.
is the one I don't like because I don't know. I've never been one of those people that likes to sleep. I don't know what it is, but I think it's because I have this fear of missing out. And I feel
FOMO.
like if I'm sleeping, I can't, I'm missing something. There's something going on in the world that I'm missing out on while I'm sleeping.
Yeah, yeah. Uh yeah, so one of these things that happens during the deep parts of our sleep, and we have, you know, a few different cycles of sleep throughout the course of uh sleep. And in the deep parts of each of those cycles is when the lymphatic system primarily turns on. And what does that do? The lymphatic system is the system that activates primarily during that deep part of our cycles of sleep, where it's actually flushing out the dead neurotransmitters that have accumulated throughout the course of the day out of our brains into our bodies and just flushes it out. Uh, and so it's no wonder that if you don't have that restful night of sleep, that system didn't have an opportunity to do what it does. And so we're going to wake up feeling groggy, hitting the snooze button, not so much energy to kind of get this day started. And if that happens over time, 100% will likely lead to us feeling chronically stressed and overwhelmed and burned out. Uh, yeah, and so from the CDC perspective, they recommend at least 7 hours of consistent regular sleep each day. Uh, if folks are working night shift, same thing applies. Like no matter when you're getting that sleep, we can change our circadian rhythms. It's possible. So no matter when we're getting that sleep, as long as we're getting that consistent, at least 7 hours of sleep in a day, um, that can do wonders for us. If folks are struggling with this, and I heard your struggle,
Well, that's one of my struggles. The other struggle is this dog that's in here with me. So you tell Trent not to wake me up so early.
yeah, Trent, listen. Yeah, I get that. I'm a cat dad myself, and sometimes this little one, walks on my chest. It's so cute, but I'm like, no, I want to sleep, mom.
Right, exactly.
Um, but yeah, so yeah, real things happen like that. But I'm going to share what the CDC recommends, and uh, like they recommend keeping your environment cool, dark, quiet. Um, if you do tend to run cold like me, I actually prefer actually to go to bed when it's a little bit warmer. The point is that like you're not waking up in a sweat in the middle of the night. Because we do tend to warm up when like when we are sleeping. And so we don't want to kind of wake up in that sweat because then we're disrupting our sleep. And so that's the point that the CDC is getting across. Um, so whatever temperature works for you, that's what I would recommend there. Cool, quiet. Um, it's hard for me to say avoiding, but like avoiding or limiting the screen time before bed,
Yes, that's a big one, isn't it?
a real big one. And that blue light technology, even though there's technologies that can kind of like squash that a little bit, at the end of the day, you're still activating your brain, and those screens are telling your brain to stay awake. And so if we are scrolling and doing things on our iPhones or iPads or laptops as we're going off to sleep, it's gonna be that much tougher for us to fall asleep. Uh, things to avoid also close to sleep, within an hour or two. We don't want to be eating like super heavy meals before we go to sleep. We don't want to be eating heavy, not eating heavy meat. We don't want to be like doing like vigorous activity, like physical exercise in that window of time before we go to sleep. If that's your only opportunity to exercise, I'll always recommend let's see if we can make it moderate. Um, but yeah, when you said when you do exercise, you feel tired, absolutely. Um, we just don't want to be doing that so close to when we are going to bed.
Yeah, your brain's kind of stimulated. I think your
Mhm.
body will feel tired, but your brain is still kind of wired up from the exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and if you are one of those people who have a racing mind, um, some strategies you might want to incorporate is to do a data dump
Mm.
of what is going on in your mind, whether that's, talking it out or literally like writing it out. Um, I know that have been times where I I've come across that and it was very much work related. And I was like, oh my God, I forgot to do this, this, and this today. And that was like keeping me up. So what I did was like just emailed my work account, just to kind of get it out of my brain into my inbox for the next day. I knew it was going to be there and I would get it done then. So that data dumping could be a helpful strategy for folks, if there's that racing mind element in there. And then of course I always say if there's a snore, don't ignore the snore. That that could be a quick fix. And so I'll always recommend consulting with a sleep specialist to see what might be contributing to that and what might be able to be done um, in connection with that. Because again, it's really all about optimizing this period of time so our bodies can heal and rejuvenate in the way that they're intended to do. So that's the sleep category. So those are the first five.
Okay, got them. I'm writing them down.
And then the next five are maybe categories that might be a little bit new for folks. And so just moving right on into category number six, I'll talk about rest, which is different from sleep.
Mm.
Rest. What do I mean by rest? Uh, so from the brain's perspective, the latest studies out there show that our brains start to fatigue after about 90 minutes of focused activity. And so I can only imagine what you as vets are up against in this category. Uh, it can be sooner than that. If it's a more intense activity, your brain can actually start to fatigue sooner than the 90 minutes. But generally speaking, focused activity, 90 minutes. Our brain is not a muscle. So our brain is not telling us in real time, like, oh my God, I'm tired. Like, I need a break.
There's not pain like
Right.
muscle fatigue. Yeah.
Exactly. When your muscles are telling you in real time, I want to take a break, like your brain listens to that, and most of the time we listen and we
Right.
take that,
And you stop.
we stop. So I find this piece of science really valuable, uh, because if there's a way for vets in their world, like particular to this audience, to incorporate, sprinkle. We're not talking like hour break after every 90 minutes. That's not what this is about. It's really like a few minutes of just distracting yourself from the task at hand to think about something else. Ideally something that's uplifting, something that's positive. Maybe you think about a loved one, maybe you think about a loved animal, maybe you think about um a, like a vacation that's coming up or favorite vacation that you had before. Maybe you listen to a song that brings you joy. Uh, and if you scatter those throughout the day, um, that could go a long way.
I like that a lot because it is difficult in a veterinary life, especially if you're at a busy clinic and you're having a busy day it's just like boom, 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 boom. Um, so you would have to be intentional
Mm,
about walking away for a minute between the clients, going into your office, shutting the door, doing some breathing, listening to a song or whatever. It would be a very intentional act. Um, but I would encourage people to do that, because even if you take a minute or two to do that for yourself, it's probably going to pay big dividends.
hmm Yeah. Uh, the more that we are actually able to do that, the more efficient we'll actually be at the task at hand,
Mm.
based on the research that is out there currently. Um, you're more efficient, uh, and you're the expert here in the vet, but like in the business world, you can complete tasks quicker, um, and so that you can end your day sooner. But like that might be different in the vet space.
Well, I mean, you might not be able to end your day sooner, but if you are working more efficiently, and if you get so overwhelmed and stressed out during your day that you can't focus, then you
Mm-hmm.
are going to waste time. So if you take a few minutes away to kind of get yourself rested a little bit and refocused, and you come back and you can write your records quicker or deal with the next patient in a more efficient way, you will save time,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and you won't get burned out, which is what we're trying to avoid, right?
indeed. Indeed. So yeah, so
I
that's
like
the
that.
rest category. Um, Number 7 is gratitude.
Yes.
And what do I mean by gratitude? So appreciation is another way, thankfulness are other ways just to talk about gratitude. And um, when I say gratitude, it's remember those three brain parts that I highlighted earlier, the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the prefrontal cortex, and how
Yes.
they change shape. Gratitude in particular has a direct impact on reshaping these different brain parts, has a direct impact on bringing back down the size of the amygdala, and expanding again the prefrontal cortex in that hippocampus. Very powerful area to explore here. And again, we're not talking about hours of your time. Some folks are naturally like grateful for things, and they embody it. They've worked towards this, and so that's just their approach to life. And but some of us are not there, and so if you're not there, you don't have to carve out hours of your day to focus on gratitude. It really, again, based on the science that's out there, a regular practice of maybe 5 minutes a day does still have an impact. And if you're thinking about what you might include in a gratitude practice, some ideas for consideration I'll throw out there are thinking about, generally people think about like loved ones. And maybe in this audience, maybe the first people that they think about are animals, and I do call animals people. Uh, and so maybe you're thinking about loved ones or loved animals, and if you're doing that, amazing, keep going with that. There's other categories and things that sometimes we take advantage of, and I invite you to consider those things, and those things being more of the material things that are in our life. So,
Yes.
like whether it's the bed that you get to sleep in, the running water that we have access to, that we can drink out of and wash our bodies with like super easy. The refrigerators that we have to keep our food fresh. So many different things that the air conditioning
We
that.
take for granted.
Mhm. And it's okay to be grateful for these things. And when we are grateful for those things, like that contributes to this whole gratitude practice. And the other category that I like to throw in there um that I think is hidden a little bit is great gratitude for yourself. Gratitude for the gift that each of you have listening right now, and you, Julie, as well. uh, you all are a gift to this world, and to think about what parts of that gift you want to be grateful for, personality traits, skills, strengths, so many different things that we each bring to this world, and to incorporate that possibly into your gratitude practice. And so those are just some ideas to kind of get that brain going in the gratitude way.
And thank you for saying that, because I think so many people are so down on themselves and, very much perfectionists and always judging themselves and criticizing themselves. And to change those thoughts to thoughts of being grateful for who you are and the skills that you do have, I think it's genius, because that is a excellent place to start.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so that's the gratitude arena. And then moving on to the eighth area is connection. Another way to say connection is relationship. And when I talk about this category, I highlight three prongs. The first prong is, I think, what most people think of when they think about relationships and connection, and that's with other people. And yeah, we are human and we're social creatures, and we crave connection with people who we love and trust. And so building that environment, building that community of people who you do love and trust, absolutely critical to this connection piece. But there are two other prongs that I do, again, think go overlooked, and I like to bring to awareness. And that second prong is connection to your environment, connection to your physical surroundings, whether that is the workplace, whether that is your home environment, whether that's the city or town you live in, the state you live in, the country you live in, even. How connected do you feel in these spaces? How much are you able to accomplish that homeostasis, get back to recharging, decompressing? How safe do you feel in your environment? Those are all considerations when I talk about this connection piece. And then the third prong that I incorporate into this category is going back, connection to yourself, and specifically what's important to you. What are your values? What are you living your life for other people? Are you living your life for yourself in service of other people? Two big differences there.
Yes.
And so I invite you to think about that connection to self. Sometimes we also so 95% of our brains is like subconscious, and we operate habitually on things that we've learned over the years, and we're just like accustomed to doing it as a way for the brain to be efficient with like the bombardment of information coming our way. And sometimes I've come across working with clients that there's part of that 95% that's holding them back. A term that you might know, that limiting belief term. Because at one point that served the person. But that person has since evolved, but the mindset has not evolved yet. And so I invite you to think that in this connection to self, think about what might be happening subconsciously that might not be serving you anymore, because it's possible to change that. It's totally possible to change that. You bring that to the surface, and then it's all about reprogramming that brain, so that 5% conscious brain, once you reprogram and work to habituate it, it'll become that new 95%. So with connection, it's those three prongs. It's connection to others, healthy relationships with people who you love and trust. It's connection to your physical surroundings. It's connection to self is what I highlight in that category.
I love that. It's so true too, because I think so many of us think that we just are who we are, that we have our stories from our past and we're just doing what we're doing. And I see it with so many of my clients. They come to me and they're like, well, I can't learn that. I can't change that. I'm just, I'm that way. I say that sometimes, well, I'm just easily distracted. And I may be, but I can also change that if I work hard at it. And so I think that is a key thing to think about is, how are you living? Are you living just on autopilot, or are you really intentionally living and doing what you want to do and enjoying what you're doing each moment and being present in that moment? So I love that
Mm-hmm.
connection to yourself. That's a good way to
Yeah.
say it.
Yeah, and then the next category is we're on to number 9 now, and this is
Yes.
all about expression. This is another big one, another big area, and that when I say expression, I'm talking about emotional expression. And there's a whole body of science in connection with this category called the mind-body syndrome. And uh, what happens generally for most of us as humans growing up, we're conditioned, we're raised not to be expressive and not to acknowledge what's
Go to
happening.
your room.
Go to your
Don't come
room.
out until you have a smile on your face. That was my parents' line. Don't
Yes,
come out of your room till there's a smile on your face.
yes, yes. Um, and generally, we're not taught how to manage our emotions because it's not in our curriculum. I actually did come across, I was watching a show the other day, and there was one teacher. She actually, there's like some sort of course in one school somewhere. So like, yay for that, because I think this should be
Yes, we're
across the system.
starting.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, so again, going back to the self-compassion piece, we were not taught how to do this. We were generally raised and conditioned to not acknowledge what's happening from an emotional perspective. So yes, it could be scary, and yes, it can be uncomfortable. Uh, but also know the importance of doing it. And what does that mean? So the goal that I talk about, like the metaphor that I use here is like our goal should be to create uh, an emotional highway without traffic. That just kind of
Okay.
like
I like that.
it flows. It flows because like we're human. We're always going to feel something. We're never not going to be unemotional about something.
Right.
Even if we're not expressive with it, we're always going to be feeling something, and we generally like bottle it in. Um, but so there's always something going to be happening, a situation, an event, something to kind of make us feel something. And uh, the idea is to acknowledge what's happening, what these emotions are, what they're about, and then in healthy ways, release them in as real time as possible. Because when we don't release them, what happens is build, 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 build until they have nowhere else to go except into physical stress symptoms or emotional stress symptoms, and that runs the gamut. Uh,
Right.
I mentioned a lot of my symptoms earlier, and so I'm not going to repeat those. But that's what happens to us as humans, and um, I can't underscore the importance of of releasing what's happening to kind of clear it out, clear it out, clear it out, because we're always going to be emotional about something. And if we clear it out, we're going to avoid those symptoms, uh, and can be a huge impact on living life without chronic stress and burnout. And so, what are some ways that you might consider in releasing these emotions? We talked about it a bit before about like um, some people choose like the short-term feel-good things that are not so healthy for us long-term. So some people go to the drink, go to the smoking, go to the drugs,
Get a
go to
cookie out of the break room.
go to the cookie, um, whatever it is, like the quick fix to not have to deal with like what we are actually feeling.
Right.
Um, so when I say healthy ways, like these are just some examples of strategies that have surfaced with working with clients of my own, and um, journaling is a big one. writing it out, writing out unsent letters. If you're angry at someone or a situation, just get it out. No one's going to read the stuff. Write it all out. Be as messy as you can, be as messy as you want, as long as you're not directing that back at you. Um, that's key as well. We want to be directing this stuff out so we get it out of our system. So yeah, be messy with the journaling, be messy with the writing. Some people talk to people that they confide in, and that could be at a professional level, that could be at a friend level, family level. Talking can be really beneficial for some people. Some people write poetry, some people write songs, some people sing songs, some people dance, some people do go out for walks in nature, some people do a workout, some people and some of you might laugh at this, but literally like more like it's been happening more and more. Clients are confiding in me and telling them like what they want to start getting back to. And some people like talk to inanimate objects, like if they're going for a walk, like talking to a tree when no one else is around. Just get out.
Because they're not going to judge you.
They're not going to judge you.
Yeah.
Talking
Your
to the stuff.
dogs. I talk to my dogs a lot.
Yeah. I was
My
just gonna say.
I carry on whole conversations with my dogs, and my husband laughs at me, and my son said to me one time, he's like, "Mom, why do you talk to the animals?" I said, because they don't just say anything back. They'll listen to all my conversation, and they like to hear me talk. But yeah, so that would work. Talking to your
Yeah.
pets.
Talking to your pets.
Hmm.
And again, if you're angry about something, um, totally okay to say, all right, pet, I hate this person for this reason. I hate this situation for this reason. Just don't
Right.
direct it to the pet.
Well, of course. And don't use your angry voice because they know when you're angry.
Exactly.
So you have to say it in a baby voice or something.
Yeah.
That sing-songy voice that animals like. But yeah, I mean, journaling, I think, is a really hard one for, I always had the story that I wasn't good at writing. And so journaling to me just seemed very like foreign. And but I started doing it when I started learning about life coaching and getting coached. And, my kids were already journaling because they were, either smarter or less distracted than I am, but it really does help. And it doesn't have to be like Dear Diary. It could just be like anything that comes into your brain and kind of just
Mhm.
that thought dumping or, this person's a jerk and that person hurt my feelings or, whatever it is. And nobody has to read it. And you don't have to leave it laying around your house if you don't want anyone to read it. But it really is something that I think is healthy for people to just get it out. And it also creates awareness.
Mm.
Like if you write down things and you keep seeing the same theme, well, I keep writing that I don't like this or I don't like that, but I haven't changed it. So
Mhm.
maybe I should change that because I keep writing that I don't like it and I keep doing it or whatever, those kind of examples.
Yeah. Yeah. And like there's so many other ways like that could resonate for folks, the healthy release of what's going on internally
Yes.
from an emotional perspective. And yeah, it's just it's so powerful. It's really key. It all of these 10 are key, of course, but
Yes.
I say
But
that
if
this.
you haven't tried it, if you haven't tried journaling, I encourage people to do so because a lot of people resist it, I think.
Yeah. Uh
I have a
yeah.
sneezing dog. I don't know if you can hear that, but my dog is sneezing.
Okay. Little cat is snoozing on the couch.
Sleeping, right? Yeah, they're always in the room, so whatever they do, we hear it on the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're up to number 10. Is that anything else about expressing your emotions?
No, I think we covered it there
Okay,
and
so you got one more.
one
I've been keeping
more.
track. I have them written down.
Yeah. So you ready for number 10?
Yes.
We're ready for this. All right. It's all about having fun,
Oh, yay. I love that. I'm all about having fun.
laughter, joy. When we have fun, when we laugh, we're changing the hormones in our bodies. And one of the changes that's happening when we are actively stressed, our cortisol level is elevating. when we are having fun, when we are laughing, we are actually bringing those cortisol levels down. It can
Mm.
support us getting back to that homeostasis. And yeah, and so here, like if you're struggling right now, because yes, I've been there and it's not fun. And if someone said to me back then, like, have fun, I'd be
Just
like,
laugh. Yeah, just
yeah,
laugh when you're under chronic stress, right?
yeah, I journal about that.
Deck 'em, right?
You know? I journal about decking them. Uh, but so what I would say here, if you are struggling right now, and laughing doesn't seem feasible, think about like what what brought you joy before? Um, what made you laugh before? Think about some of those times and think about how you might incorporate, if not all of that, just a piece of that into your moment, into your day. And the other strategy that I've worked with clients on is what does your inner child want to do?
Mm, I love that. That's a good question to ask yourself.
Hmm. At the end of the day, you're in control. You're the adult. You're in control. So you don't have to do what the inner child wants to do, but like maybe that inner child has some ideas of things that that it wants to kind of like get back to doing some joy and laughing again. And if it feels right to you, it feels comfortable, by all means, explore that.
Yeah, when you say that, it reminds me of when you were a kid and you just go swing on the swings,
Mm-hmm.
and that would bring you joy. It's such a simple thing, but you could do that as an adult. We just don't.
Yeah.
Or or fly a kite or roll around on the floor with your dog or your cat or yeah. Yeah, that's so important. And I think I like to remind veterinarians that some of our job, not all of it, but some of our job is super fun and super funny. The clients are hilarious. They say the craziest things. The puppies are a blast. The kittens are hilarious. If we can focus on some of those things in our day, I think that would bring you at least a small amount of joy in between the hard stuff. Like there's a lot of hard. I mean, I don't want to discount what we do, but my favorite thing is when I walk into a room and there's a puppy. Wow, that's so fun. And like I just get on the floor with them and, have a good time. Cause you got to take advantage of what you can.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that. What brings you joy? And asking your child, your 5-year-old self, what did I like to do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, I love those 10. I think those are going to help a lot of people. And I wrote them down. So if anybody needs that, I can email it to you or whatever. Or I'm sure you will as well. So what have I not asked you before we wrap this up that I should have? And I've loved this. So if we want to do more, we can definitely do more. If people are enjoying this conversation, just send me an email or put it in the notes and we'll try to get back together again and talk some more about this. But what do we need to say before we get off this podcast that we haven't said?
Two things are coming to my mind.
Okay, good. I'm glad. I love when I ask questions and people have answers.
One of them, I know, right? Like that's a podcast. Um, so one of them is if there's anyone interested, there like you can access a free download of these like highlighted ten areas with like
Oh,
quick
on your website?
on the website, quick blurts of
Awesome.
that science.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that too, but okay, we'll tell them the email address or the website.
Yeah, I can share that link with you if folks
Mm-hmm.
are interested in that. And then the second thing really is just a comment, and that is before this podcast started, I did share with Julie like how much of an honor like it was for me to be here in the presence of not only Julie but the rest of the audience who are listening as people in your profession. I don't have the experience as a vet. I do have an experience as a pet owner. uh, who has lost an animal.
It's tough.
And it's tough. It's tough. And I know it's tough on you because the vet that I was working with, like, all the respect in the world on this planet that I have for her in helping me through that situation. And I know that was tough on her because she was quite emotional during that stint as well.
Right.
And so I really just wanted to end with sharing how that gratitude that I have for you as vets, the work that you do, and not even just for like the tough times, even for like my annual checkups I take Dolly to, the just that too, and the care that you give to each of those visits. It's just it's it's so beautiful and it's so powerful. And thank you so much for what you do. And yeah, it was a real privilege to be able to do this, Julie, today. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, I just love to hear you say that because we don't hear it enough. We hear about the bad things that happen, but we don't always hear how grateful people are for us. And we forget that there's so many people out there that are grateful. They might not always say it to us, but they really are. They'll say it to other people. They'll say, "Oh,
Mm.
that was so awesome," or "They did such a good job." And I think we just have to realize that that's all out there for us. We just have to remember it. So I appreciate you saying that a lot. So tell us your website and where we can find more about you, and I'll put it in the show notes as well.
Okay, yeah. So the website is www.themindblowingcoach.com. And if you want the free download for these the 10, the O'Brien 10, uh, there is a tab for free resources. And then one of the options is stress relief tips. So you click on that page, enter your information, you'll get the download.
I
Uh,
love that.
and yeah, and so I can send that direct link to you, Julie, too.
Beautiful. I love it so much. Well, it's been so fun meeting you. I've loved everything that you've said. I took a bunch of notes. I always do when I'm listening and talking to people. I always feel like I'm in school because I have like pages of notes. But I really appreciate all the things that you told us today, and it was really fun to meet you.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is Andrew O'Brien. So everybody, we all appreciate what you told us today, and have a beautiful week, everyone. Bye. Bye, Andrew.
Bye.